As you can tell by the title, today we're going to be discussing Quiet on Set. I'm going to break down the first episode, my thoughts, my commentary, and just give you guys my genuine reactions to what we've seen just from the first episode. I'm going to break this down into three YouTube videos since there are 3 episodes. Honestly, y'all, it's so terrible. So let's just jump into it. Within the first 3 minutes of this documentary, we are being shown obvious moments during Dan Schneider's reign where he's clearly sexualizing children and specifically young girls.
Like squirting goo on Jamie Lynn's face when she's just 13 years old.
Feel these kids' feet. Wow, they're really soft.
People were looking back at old scenes and saying, Dan Schneider is obsessed with feet.
Check this out.
It's all very gross and foul.
Impossible to escape children's feet.
Dan Schneider.
Absolutely disgusting.
He's a grown-ass man. What the are you doing?
Sometimes I wonder if you can get juice from a potato.
Did that air on Nickelodeon?
In another video, Ariana's pouring water on herself in what seems like a very sexual manner. And people started saying, this feels inappropriate for children.
And so it's pretty clear that at the beginning of this docu-series, they're setting the tone that this is not for the good of Dan. This is for the good of all the people that he abused. They do not set the tone for it to be something that you can come out of it and look at Dan and any of the other people that they named that were abusers and actually think that they weren't bad people. Pretty early on, we are exposed to what a piece of shit Dan is. And he was exposing not just the kids who are watching, but the actual kids who were unfortunate enough to have to work under him. He was exposing them to sexual ideas and themes and behavior that they should have never been involved in, ever. And it leaves everybody with the same question, which is how and why was this allowed? But we all know why. We start going into Dan's past, his history. They take us into understanding him, where he grew up, where he came from. He pretty much tells everyone that he was the awkward fat kid growing up, and he continues to kind of market himself as the awkward fat kid, almost to disarm people from him. It seems like Dan's personality and his way of getting people to want to be around him was to self-deprecate. And if you know anything about anything, when someone is in front of you self-deprecating, you should probably avoid them. And I'm not saying that everyone who self-deprecates is a bad person. I'm saying those people tend to have serious problems with their own self-worth and their own self-love. And if they won't even look out for themselves, baby, they're not gonna look out for you. That's all I'm gonna say about that. He freaking lied about going to Harvard. They seemingly allude to his parents having money. So Dan did come from some form of money. His parents didn't think he was gonna do much with his life. They didn't think he was very talented. They didn't think he had any kind of actual practical skill. So they didn't expect much from him. Then he actually got casted to be a part of some show. On the show, he got casted and was put as the awkward fat guy. His size was obviously a really big thing for him in his mind, and you could tell he probably has a lot of internalized fat phobia because he probably grew up being bullied a lot for it. I'm only saying this to let you know how it was that he disarmed so many people around him, was that he would make a lot of self-deprecating jokes, and that was one of the ways he got onto TV, was making self-deprecating jokes. At this point, I needed to know for myself. At this point, I wanted to know what Dan's sun, moon, rising was. That's what I wanted to know, because from all we've heard, he's a liar, he's clearly a fucking pervert, and he's a dangerous person, to be honest with. So I looked it up. Are you ready? Are you ready for this? Buckle up, Buttercup. He is a Capricorn sun, a Capricorn moon, a Capricorn MC, and guess what? Guess what his rising sign is? He's an Aries. His rising sign is an Aries. Now, before I say anything, any Aries who are watching, relax. I'm an Aries too. I can say this. Aries men are fucking insane. I have met none, not a one who I have been like, wow, you calm my spirit. And I'm not saying they aren't out there, but they seem to be rare. A healed Aries man is like a rare shiny Pokemon. We don't know where they are, but they are rare. And finding out this man had so many Capricorn placements in so many influential places. And get this, his Mars, because his Mars is important when it comes to how he's acting, it's an Aquarius. Now look, if you're a Capricorn, you get it. I don't have to shit about it. You get it. I have a Capricorn bestie. I've never met a Capricorn that wasn't painfully self-aware. You get it. Capricorns hold so much power. They hold so much power in their presence. They get it. They understand how that can easily turn to something maniacally evil if they really wanted it to. Now, a healed Capricorn, an unhealed Capricorn, run. As an Aries, those are actually the craziest. Those ones are the scariest. Aries has nothing on a Capricorn's rage. And you know why that is? Because they have the ability to plan out your demise. Now, an Aries is just gonna go crazy. Like, if we feeling it, we feeling it, and you gonna know we feeling it. And then we're gonna walk away and get over it in like 5 minutes. A Capricorn, they will smite you till the day you die. And so will an Aquarius. I just felt like I had to tell y'all that before we get into the rest of this episode and before we get into the rest of this series. Because if you are expecting anything good to come from this man, be done with it. Unalive those expectations right now. They will not stand. We will hear nothing good about what this man did, has done, and has facilitated. We get introduced to Katrina Johnson. She was one of Dan's first, I guess, proteges. Dan was her mentor. She worked with Dan from 10 years old to 16. We also get introduced to Leon. I didn't catch his last name, but he was a young black boy who was also on the show. He talks about how he felt very exploited. They put him into leotards for his downstairs area to be seen by everybody, and he said he felt very exposed, which is valid. They give us no prep time. They immediately smack us in the face with a costume they unfortunately put Leon in as a child, and he was called Nose Boy. And initially I'm like, that's racist as because it is. It's hella racist. But more, I'm not gonna say more importantly, but what was more alarming, actually, like more in your face, was that the nose that they put on him clearly looked like a genitalia area.
I'm Captain Victor!
What are your special powers?
His audience is kids as young as 6. I'm allergic to asteroids! And the joke in that sketch is effectively a shot joke.
And it's disgusting. It's freaking disgusting. It's disgusting. And you'll notice very quickly that that's a theme, that Dan does this over and over again to all of the children that he can on set. And it's, I'm sorry. I actually genuinely feel sick talking about this and uncomfortable because he does this so many times throughout his career with Nickelodeon, and it's wild that no one stopped him. I guess back then people were a lot more open to disgusting, sexist, and inappropriate humor and thought it was funny. A lot of the things that Dan does is under the guise of humor. And I would really like us as a society to take a step back and really question what is humor. What actually is funny and comedic, and what is actually just extremely dangerous? What is that? Because we have quite a few comedians who did not age well. And there's this whole joke of, oh, people can't take a joke anymore. Like Dan Schneider jokes, are those funny? Was that cool back in the day? Did you think that was okay? Like, you know what I mean? And I would like us as a society to really question what is funny? What is actual humor? Because if it's in any way, shape, or form normalizing, regulating, something that should never be normalized, something that should never be okay, if it's desensitizing people to things that are very harmful to everyone involved, maybe it's not so funny. Maybe it's not funny at all. Maybe the people who find it funny are the same people who would do it. Just something to think about. But all right, okay, we go back to Katrina Johnson, and they call her mom.
And spoke to my parents and said, hey, Katrina's getting too fat.
My question is, did her mom put him on speakerphone so she could hear it too? And no shade to her mom, because I don't know how Katrina how that message was delivered to her, or if her mom never even told her, and then she went on set and Dan told her to her face, because I could see that happening too. But I would never want my child to hear those words. I would want to protect them so much from ever hearing those words, because she says that haunted her into her adulthood, even now, presently. That shit f***ed her up. And I can speak from my own experience as somebody who was in the entertainment industry from a young age. That shit will f*** you up. It was in that moment, I promise you, that an eating disorder developed. Her body develops. And so they immediately hate her. She gets little to no work. She goes and sees a little girl perform one night at some comedy club. I don't know. Her name was Amanda.
Brian Robbins and Dan Schneider came and said, you gotta check out this girl. She's really amazing. And the girl was Amanda Bynes.
In the same breath, pretty much, Amanda's in and Katrina's out. She goes to college. And it's interesting because they switch her out with Amanda, and you can't help but wonder, would this have been Katrina's fate if she had checked all the boxes that Dan was looking for? Dan Schneider's first show was the Amanda Show. That was his first show, like his name being on it 100%. He was the creator. That was his first show. And it was what skyrocketed his career. Amanda is not seen often from her fellow coworkers, the other children who are on the show. They realize that while they have to take their 3 hours of school on set, they find out that Amanda's not really in school often. Apparently, on the multiple times and days that she missed school, she was hanging out with Dan. The kids on the show, they knew that if they pissed Dan off, then that was the end of their career. They were doing anything they possibly could to make sure Dan liked them. So the last thing they were going to do was bring up how weird it was that Amanda was spending all this personal time alone with Dan while she was supposed to be in school. Parents were legally required to be on set, but they didn't want to get in the way of anything because they wanted their kids to do well and possibly get more opportunities from being on set. Amanda's dad was actually hands-on, had every single thing to do with his daughter, which initially you're like, good. However, no. When we find out that Amanda is left alone with Dan Schneider while she was supposed to be in school, and we're wondering where her parents were, her dad knew. Her dad knew and did not care. It was very much giving exactly what Britney Spears' dad did to her. But then we find out that there are 2 women in the writer's room, and only 2, the rest are men.
Female writers on the Amanda Show told us that this experience was really one of the most disturbing in their careers. Working for Dan was like being in an abusive relationship.
Christy and Jenny. We just then go into a disturbing introduction to all the things that Dan subjected them to. And I just want to remind y'all, this is the first season of the show. Dan tells them, I don't think women are funny at all. Dan's clearly sexist, doesn't respect women, and is a creep. And he pretty much makes that known to them pretty early on. We get to the character that Amanda Bynes played on her show called Penelope Taint. Now, if you don't know what the word taint can mean when it is seen as an inappropriate term, I suggest you look it up.
Hello, citizens. My name is Penelope Taint.
So, Penelope Taint is a character that Dan created. And Dan had said to us in the writer's room, don't tell what this word really means. He wanted us to keep that a secret.
Another very inappropriate and disgusting term that none of us should have been introduced to at the age that we were introduced, and sure as hell Amanda Bynes should have never been hearing that word or saying that word or embodying someone whose name has that word in it. You know, one of the things that both of them let us know early on is they're getting paid nothing. And what's changed? Writers still don't get paid, and it's effed up. This is when we actually get introduced to Raquel. She was on the first season of the Amanda Show. It's her birthday, and her mom brought her a fat cake for her birthday for her to share with everybody. And apparently Dan got mad, like real mad.
My 13th birthday, people brought me this big cake, like a massive cake. But it was told to me, Dan's really upset. Why'd you get her that cake? Like, that's a big cake. Like, she didn't need that big of a cake.
I'm laughing because what the like, they can't have cake? Who gets mad? I just don't get it. I really cannot fathom where that rage is coming from. Like, bro, sit down. Shut up and sit down. God. It's obvious. He's like a man-child. I cannot fathom that level of egomaniacal nonsense. Were you mad it wasn't for you, Dan? Did you feel left out? No. Did you feel like her mom should have brought you a cake too? No. It was obvious that after that, he didn't like her at all. And see, she wasn't on the show after the first season.
I definitely saw Amanda being very close physically with Dan. There were many times that I saw Amanda sitting behind him, hugging him, or giving him like a neck massage or whatever. Dan and Amanda had a close relationship, and I didn't think anything different than that.
I just can't. I just keep thinking like, huh? What? What do you mean you didn't think anything? I know the 90s were a different time, but it's really giving that all y'all cared more about yourself than Amanda, and like nobody was looking out for her, and nobody wanted to say anything because they wanted to keep their job.
Hi, welcome to my koozie. And my special guest is the executive producer of the amazing show, Dan Schneider.
Fine.
Now, you're the executive producer of the...
That is a grown man who has no relation to that girl. There's no way in hell you would ever convince me that that was normal behavior. This documentary does not give you any cushion in between the blows. Because after the weird hot tub scene that we see, Christy and Jenny let us know that Dan, he starts showing, I'm not sure I can say that word on YouTube, corn. It's something that rhymes with corn, to people in the writer's room. And he starts forcing Christy and Jenny to give him massages. It's getting a little Weinstein in here, isn't it?
We were in the writer's room, and Christy was talking about high school. And Dan was just said, you know, it'd be funny if you leaned over the table and acted like you were and told that story about high school. She said no at first, and everyone's kind of laughing too because he's making it like this big joke. So she just leaned over the table and did what he asked her to do.
Do you remember Dan asking you to act out being... I'd rather not. Like, I'm not proud of it, and I'm also like, I just think of that poor girl and what she had to, go through.
Like, what the fuck? It's so gross. It's just so, oh my God, I just want to, You've never gotten your beat before. You must have never gotten your beat before. You must have really never gotten your beat before. Let me do it. Let me do it, because I have so much rage in me. I would like to know who were the other male writers on the show. I'm probably going to look that up, and if I find it, I'll put it on the screen somewhere. I want them to also catch all the smoke because they also enabled this behavior. She's visibly uncomfortable. You can tell, like, that memory, like, gives her a physical reaction still. And I literally wrote, she is clearly traumatized from it, and she even seems to take some responsibility for that happening to her, which is sad because a lot of people do that when they've been victimized, is they try to find ways that it's their fault because it's a roundabout way of taking their control back. And it is so disturbing and sad and like heartbreaking to see her damn near choke through having to even remember that. We find out that Dan, who is absolutely responsible for the pay that these people are getting, he's forcing them to split their writer salary with each other. They're all having to split the same salary, which is freaking nuts. And so Jenny calls the writers union and is like, hey, is this legal? And they're like, no. So Jenny's like, bro, he's doing that. This is what Dan is doing to us. We're not getting paid enough. Maybe a week or two later, the writers are told that they are now getting paid a separate salary. They're not having to split their salary. And Dan calls Jenny and pretty much threatens her.
Dan called me at home, and he asked me if I was conspiring against the company. Because if I find out that you did, you're never going to work for Nickelodeon again.
For doing something illegal? For not paying people a livable wage? Sound familiar, don't it? Sound real familiar, don't it? We find out that nobody like gets any days off. Christy has a meeting with her agent, and she says not even like 5 minutes after leaving that meeting, she gets a call and she gets told that she's been fired from the show. And she's been fired because she took 2 days off throughout the entire season. It should be illegal, the amount of labor they are expecting writers to do without days off. But that's what they do. And then Dan tells Jenny, right, the only woman in the entire writers group, hey, we're going to let you come back on the show. However, you have to work 11 weeks without pay. And she was devastated. Jenny obviously thought that was effed up. It was probably extremely hard to find another writer's job. So she took it despite all of those implications and all the things that Dan denied her. And then she quit 4 days later. Dan called Jenny into his office at one point within those 4 days, and all of the male writers were in there. And Dan was asking like, okay, yeah, what's your pitch? I guess she had a pitch for like an idea for the show. She told him the pitch in front of all the male writers. And then Dan randomly was like, hey, didn't you used to do phone sex work? Didn't you used to do phone sex? Wasn't that like a previous job that you used to do? And she was like, no, I never did that. Not that there's anything wrong with sex workers, because there's not. But she was like, no, I never did that. And he was like, yeah, I remember you saying that like sometime last season. Didn't that come up in conversation? That's a job you used to do. And obviously Jenny's like, no, you're not going to bully me into admitting something I never did. You're not going to bully me into saying something about myself that's not true. And she leaves and she pretty much breaks down crying because she kind of got a taste of what was to come. She was like, if I am the only woman writer in this entire freaking writer's room, this is what I'm going to be experiencing, because none of those men thought what Dan was doing was disgusting. They thought it was funny. Jenny realizes that what she went through was not normal, very much abusive, and very much not legal. So she sues him. They settled out of court that it drastically affected her writing career, where it was pretty much non-existent. And she literally said, I knew what I was risking. I knew this was going to destroy my career or any hopes I had of working as a writer in Hollywood, but it wouldn't matter if I knew I could stop him from doing this to other people. And she literally said, and to find out that it didn't stop after I left, after I risked everything to sue that man, is crazy. That's the first episode. My thoughts, if this was the first episode of the docuseries, I think that the second and third are going to be insane. I don't even think we've gotten to the meat and the butter of this freaking nightmare that it was to work for Dan Schneider and work around his colleagues who were clearly also aligned with him and his disgusting behavior. To let me know your thoughts and opinions. Just in general, I would like to say this. The one show that I did like was the Amanda Bynes show. I actually loved that show. I love that show, and it is so sad looking back at it and looking at how much exploitation everybody went through during that show, but also looking at how exploited Amanda was and how unprotected she was by her parents and by everybody around her. She is and was so talented. She's literally phenomenal, like a phenomenal actress, phenomenal comedian. And to see just how sick everything got. And in the first season, this is the first season, it's sad. I'm gonna go outside and get some fresh air and some sun. Peace. Have a great day. Make good decisions. Bye.